Today we're going to talk about the summer blockbuster hits of the 70s and 80s. The movies that had us begging our parents for tickets, the taste of popcorn, and taking us to a galaxy far, far away. These flicks didn't just entertain us, they defined an entire generation. Stick around, let's talk about it.
All I need are some tasty waves, cool buzz, and I'm fine.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I am Rad, back with another video. And before we get started, I just want to give a shout out to my sponsor of today's video, which is myself. Totally Rad Candles. If you didn't see the last video that I put up regarding a company that my wife had started along with my help, regarding candles that are made from 80s and 90s movie characters and some musicians, maybe some cartoons. For those of you that go to the website, the link's in the description. You can use Rad Graham 10 as a promo code when you check out to get 10% off your first order. Something that I've worked on for a long time. My wife and I are very proud about it and would really like you to go check it out. And it helps support the channel because what we make on this stuff, we put right back into the channel when it comes to cameras and software and all that type of fun stuff. But with that aside, I wanted to talk about the Summer Blockbusters, kind of based off of the magazine that we get, Remind magazine, along with our TV guide. We do still get those. And they recently sent this one out, and it's regarding the Summer Blockbusters. And it's really cool because, you know, I didn't really ever think about this, that there was a starting point for the Summer Blockbuster. And that started in the 70s. Obviously, I was much too young to remember when that happened, but we all in the early 80s were the benefactors of what was started in the 70s and of course carried on to the 80s. And it's just not quite the same anymore. It just doesn't have that that oomph, I guess, that I'm looking for something to come out in the theaters for me to want to go you know, to the theater and break away from the summer fun. All right, so let's set the scene. It's the summer of 1975, and back then, movies were kind of a dead zone. People didn't really go to the movies. As you remember, when we got out of school, it was, you know, for me growing up in Corpus, it was going to the beach. It was, you know, maybe going to the lake, going fishing, hanging out with friends, doing a lot of stuff versus being cooped up in a movie theater during our summer break. It was kind of one of the last things that we wanted to do is to sit in a movie theater. But in the summer of 1975, a young, relatively unknown director at the time, Steven Spielberg, came out with a movie that we all know about a shark called Jaws. It wasn't just a movie, it turned out to be a cultural earthquake that's still something that I want to watch this very day. Jaws was the first movie to ever hit over $1 million in domestic sales and over 260 million globally. The first of its kind. Universal, who made the movie, took a huge gamble on it. It was in 400 roughly movie theaters throughout the nation, and they spent $1.8 million on the marketing. Now, if you do a little bit of history on Jaws, it turned out to be plagued with a lot of problems. There were several of the mechanical sharks that were made because the studio was saying, no, we need to make these in a tank, in a studio, make it in the tank. And Spielberg insisted on, no, these need to be filmed in the open ocean. So, of course, with salt water getting into the linkage and the gears, it ruined quite a bit of them and caused a lot of setbacks on the movie. It was actually supposed to come out, I believe, in December or November of the previous year, along with a few other movies that had come out to be, you know, blockbusters of that time. But because of the production issues that they had, it was pushed back. And so then they were like, okay, well, let's make a movie as children are out for the summer and they're at the beach. Let's make a movie about a crazy shark that's killing everybody. And the fact that it was filmed in the ocean made it that much more realistic for all of us kids. Now, as I said, for me, I was only 1 year old when that movie came out, but I do remember I don't know if I'd mentioned before, but my father had owned and operated an electronics store in Corpus Christi that sold Zenith and a lot of other brands. And I do remember, because he owned the store, he had some pretty good tech in his house. And he had the projector screen where you put it was either a laser disc or a Betamax tape, and and you would, like an ottoman, and then it would project it up onto the screen. And I remember when I would go to his house for the weekends, he had a pool in the backyard, and we had the little float, the little lawn chair with the big styrofoam floats on there. It would come into the house, freeze our ass off because he always kept it cold in the house. And my brother always wanted to put in Jaws. So my dad had it on Jaws. It was the first time I watched it, was over at his house for the weekend. And I have to admit, it scared the crap out of me. But being a Corpus boy, growing up on the water, it honestly didn't stop me. When we went to the beach, I was out there swimming, didn't have a problem with it. But it definitely, for what it's weird, right? I could be in the ocean and I'm not scared of it. I could be at home in a controlled environment in a living room watching it and scared out of my mind. So Jaws invented the summer blockbuster formula, which was big thrills, wide releases, and a really huge marketing budget that hit hard. So 2 years later, the formula went into hyperspace, literally, right? So with Star Wars coming out, again, I was only a few years old. I believe that came out in 1977. I was only a few years old. I know my older brother, who's 3 years older than me, went and watched it. The first Star Wars movie that I remember is Empire Strikes Back, which we went to the theater. I believe by that time I had already watched Star Wars either on video, or they were already showing it on TV at the time. But I knew that I had saw it before I had seen Empire Strikes Back. And that movie grossed $461 million, I'm reading from my notes, and had fans lined up around the block. I mean, you can still look at photos of how it was. And again, that came out during the summertime, not like July, but I'll put the month that it came up with. But it ended up, once again, setting. I was watching another video the other day talking about how franchise movies, like they started the franchise of movies that just don't exist today, right? I mean, I think the last one that we had of a fandom is what it was, is maybe Game of Thrones, and then Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. Those are the last type of fandom movies that I can think of that were made, because there's just been this lull with Hollywood to where they're not really making anything that's good, which is why these movies that came out back in the 70s still hit hard, and I still want to watch them whenever I have an opportunity to. So speaking about Star Wars, it didn't just make its money in the movies. It was the first time that merchandise was produced, right? The figures were made, the play sets, the ships, and all that type of stuff. Star Wars was everywhere. It was on clothing. It was on our underwear. It was sold at, it was either Pizza Hut or McDonald's, or one of those fast food restaurants had the toys. So it was the first of its kind to create this whole merchandising thing around the movie itself. And it was just pure genius from George Lucas's standpoint when they decided to do all that with their movies. So back to the magazine, the Remind magazine. The 80s blockbusters had a distinct vibe. They were action-packed. They often were sci-fi or fantasy-based, and they were made to where you wanted to view them more than one time. They kept you coming back. You know, you go watch it with your family, then you'd have a friend's family call up, hey, so-and-so's we're gonna go watch the movie this weekend. Do you mind if Graham comes with us? Absolutely, I'm down to watch it again, right? That's when you know it's a good movie, is when you can watch it 2 or 3 times in the same weekend. And the 1980s were literally a blockbuster buffet. You had Ghostbusters, Gremlins, The Karate Kid, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and I even believe Purple Rain. But let's give a little bit more love to the king of the summer blockbuster movies, Steven Spielberg. In 1981, he teamed up with George Lucas to make Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. I almost said the Temple of Doom. That's the second one. I mean, come on, you know, that was absolutely an epic film with that boulder scene coming down. And then when you're young and you have the sounds that are coming around you, that one just popped. And then I think after every one of them, the Temple of Doom and the Last Crusade all came out in summer months. Then, of course, we can't forget about 1982, which is when E.T. hit theaters. Now, I remember I went to the theater to watch that movie with my mom and my stepdad at this really awesome theater in Lincoln, Nebraska, which I'm going to try to find and drive by when I'm up there next week. I know it's since closed down. It's been turned into like an art community, playhouse kind of thing or whatever you call it. But I specifically remember it was one of the old theaters with the bottom floors and with the mezzanine or balcony that goes above you. Beautiful, architecture on the inside of the walls. And I got to see E.T. there. And of course, if you remember, when you would go and see a movie, the release to VHS was not instant like it is now. A movie can be in the theater and then be on Prime, or be in the theater and then within about 3 months it's already on Blu-ray and it's on Amazon, right, or Netflix. But back in the day, if you remember, movies would take almost a year to come out on VHS. So by the time they would finally come out on VHS, there was just as much excitement about the release of it on VHS, even though you've already seen it before, but there was just that much excitement. But E.T. In particular, I believe that there was a lawsuit that had happened where the people of that other movie with Richard Dreyfuss, why can't I think about it right now? Close Encounters, right? To where they said that the aliens mimicked one another and there was this lawsuit. So it took 2 or 3 years. It took quite a while before, maybe a couple years, because I think I remember in '84 it came out on VHS. So it took more than a couple years for this lawsuit to be settled before it came out on VHS. And these movies weren't just about box office numbers. They were truly an event. They were electric. Back then, theaters just had this buzz, this vibe to it where you wanted to be there. You're lined up with your buddies. Maybe you go to maybe not, you go to the corner store before, buy yourself some candy, stick it in your pocket so you can save a little bit of money. And you just lose yourself in these larger than life stories. Of course, back then, they had to be movies that were, I think, G-rated, right? Or one parent would show up to get us in, and then we would sit off by ourselves while the parents would sit over there so we can get in. But it turned into a movie-going blockbuster event. It was something, kind of like fast food, like going to McDonald's back in the day. Remember how the McDonald's looked beautiful and they had crazy colors and the play parks and all that, and now they just look very drab and bland. They were fun because it was an event. When you got to go to a McDonald's, it was an event. It wasn't something that you ate at 2 or 3 times a day like people do now. So the movies, it was an event. You did not have streaming videos 24 hours a day. I mean, our TV shut off at midnight after the American flag and then went to snow, right? So when movies came out, it was an actual event that you really wanted to go and be a part of to see. For me personally, I remember the summer of '84. I was 10 years old at the time, and asking my mom to take me to see Karate Kid. Now, I know I've made some videos about Karate Kid, how things have changed for me as I've gotten older and as I've become a second-degree black belt myself in martial arts. So my views have changed a little bit, but at the time, I remember seeing the trailers and seeing Mr. Miyagi, and I'm like, hey, that's that guy from Happy Days, right? Daniel LaRusso, I think I remember, I can't remember if it was I knew him from Red Dawn or whatever, but he looked familiar. And of course, after seeing the movie, we were just crane kicking the hell out of anybody that we could, right? I remember going to my friend's trampoline in their backyard, and we were now all of a sudden, trying to be Karate Kid on a trampoline. And it was a lot of fun. It hurt like hell, but we loved every minute of it. So why do these movies still hit so hard? They had guts, they had imagination. Jaws scared the crap out of us to where we didn't want to go into the water. Star Wars made us dream of outer space. Indiana Jones made us love our history teachers, right? We wanted to learn more about ancient history and archaeology. At least I did. I don't know about you. They weren't just summer escapes. They they shaped pop culture and gave us memories that we'll never forget. Drop a comment below and let me know some of your memories that you have from some of the summer movies, maybe ones that I've mentioned, ones that I haven't. Drop your favorite from the 70s and 80s. I'm not saying there weren't blockbuster movies in the 90s, but most of the ones that I'm talking about, all the ones I'm talking about, are from the 70s and 80s. And I still have specific memories about all of those movies. And, don't shoot the messenger, right? I've never been like a true Star Wars geek. I like the movies. I've seen every one of them multiple times, but I'm not part of the fandom when it comes to Star Wars or even Star Trek, right? But I still love watching the movies. I still would watch Jaws today if I had it. I actually don't own that video. I have all the Star Wars. I have Ghostbusters. I have The Karate Kid. And I can literally sit down and watch all of those movies in the next couple days with a close amount of the excitement that I had when I was a kid. The 70s and 80s blockbusters also changed how movies were made. Jaws was a pioneer of the wide release, just releasing them in hundreds of theaters throughout the nation to get those numbers. Star Wars turned merchandising into a gold mine. And then by the time the 80s came around, you had concept with films with killer hooks like the jet from Top Gun and, of course, Back to the Future's DeLorean. They weren't just films, they were cultural juggernauts. Boy, I say that 5 times fast. Cultural juggernauts that have been etched in history ever since. All right, Rad Graham family, before we wrap, let's give a shout out to the movie theaters of the 70s and 80s. No 4K, no Dolby, but man, the vibe was absolutely unmatched. The smell of fresh popcorn, the sound of the projector, when the sound would go down in the movies for a low spot, you can hear that projector up over your shoulder. And then, of course, still gets me to this day, right, where the lights dim and it's time to be quiet because the previews are about to start. So as always, if you love this trip down memory lane, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, sharing this video out with your friends, and consider supporting the channel by either my affiliate sponsors with freestyle watches, members only jackets, and of course our own personal company, Totally Rad Candles. Trust me, you'll love them, light them. They will smell up your house, make you feel happy, and give you nothing but good vibes. So with that said, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next video.